I'd like to call to order the City of Middletown City Council meeting for Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. Let's start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll for us?
Ms. Vittori. Here. Ms. Nenny.
Here.
Mr. Moon.
Here.
Mr. Mulligan.
Here.
Mayor Condrey.
Here. And this evening for our citizen comments, we're going to start with a presentation from the Senior Services Levy.
Hello. I'm going to take this off. I can't speak. My name's Ann Monifo, and I'm a member of the Butler County Elderly Services Advisory Committee. I'm also the interim director at the Central Connections, the senior center here in Middletown. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Elderly Service Program. Also with me today from the Council on Aging is Terry Bunting, who's Vice President of Managed Care. So if you have questions, we'll try to help answer any questions if needed. Just going to share a little bit about the program and the services that we provide, and appreciate you having me and allowing us to do this. The Elderly Service Program makes it possible for more than 4,000 Butler County seniors to remain independent at home through services like home delivered meals and personal care, medical transportation, and some personal care and things like that. In Middletown, in terms of numbers, about 24.4% of the elderly service levy money goes to residents of Middletown, which amounts to almost 1,000 people, 980, and that was in 2019. I won't be surprised to see the numbers go up because of some other special things that we're doing this year with the COVID. I think we'll have more, the numbers will be higher, even more next year. The Elderly Service Program is for many older adults that would be forced into a nursing home before it's necessary. A lot of times they lose much of their independence, their privacy, their connection to home and family and friends and the whole community when they have to go into Medicaid or into a nursing home. Many of them end up going on Medicaid once they're in there, before they go, some, and some after they exhaust what little money they had, then they end up on Medicaid too. And we as taxpayers are paying about 20% times higher to care for them in that setting than we are through the Elderly Service Program. So we do our best to try to get them enrolled in the Elderly Service Program instead. The Council on Aging of Southwestern Ohio manages the Elderly Service Program via contract with the county commissioners, the Butler County Commissioners. And Lifespan is the local agency, the local organization that serves the families and seniors, and they contract with the Council on Aging and provide case management. So they have nurses and social workers who screen all the potential clients and work with the families and decide on what services and things are appropriate for those people and if they're appropriate for the program. They have a volunteer advisory committee that's appointed by the commissioners, which helps to advise and oversee the program here in the county. To be eligible for the program, the residents in Butler County must be 65 or older and unable to perform certain basic daily activities without help. More than 90% of the funding comes from Butler County Senior Services tax levy. So in other words, the program would not exist if the levy was not there. We know that seniors of Butler County, as well as their families, are very grateful to have the support. We get a lot of letters and appreciation from people expressing their appreciation. Voters first approved the levy in 1996, a 5-year levy. It was renewed most recently in 15, and at that time we had nearly a 75% approval by the voters of Butler County. So we're hoping to be as successful this year with it too. The levy that's on the ballot in November is a renewal at 1.3 mil, and so it won't raise taxes. It costs homeowners about $3.50 a month per 100,000 on their home. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how they help older adults and their families, but first a little perspective. We think of Butler County as a place of growth with young families moving in, and it is, but it's also a place of aging. According to the census data, more than 1 in 5 Butler County households now includes a person 65 or older. My house has one of those. Among the group, about 1/3 report having a disability, meaning they may need help to function independently. The fastest growing group of older adults includes people 85 and older. And in this group, most likely is who needs help from the Elderly Service Program. Butler County ESP clients are kind of those folks that are caught in the middle. Their income is too high to qualify for Medicaid or welfare, as many people still call it, and too low to pay for private home care. The average monthly income of an ESP client is less than $2,000 a month. And from that, on the average, each of them pays $265 in out-of-pocket medical expenses right off the top. So you can do the math. They're trying to live, pay rent, utilities, and all the other expenses, eat, all the important things. Not a lot of money. Don't think many of us could do that very well. 86% of the clients are age 70 or older, and 56% of them live alone. More than 70% of the clients are women. So due to the declining health and mobility, ESP clients need help with basic activities such as housework, driving, bathing, preparing food, or managing medications. ESP clients need help, but they don't need a nursing home. The most used services in the program are electronic monitoring systems. So the help I've fallen and I can't get up, the little call buttons for help. Home care assistance help with personal care and some homemaking or housekeeping to help them. Medical transportation and home medical equipment. They also cover things like adult daycare and a few other, some minor home repairs and things like that, but that's not a big part of the program. Through the Butler County in 2019, the program delivered nearly 340,000 meals to about 1,800 homebound seniors. It provided more than 131,000 hours of home care assistance to 1,600 clients. And the program is not only compassionate, but it's also cost effective. It costs about $295 a month on the average for someone to be in that program and receive services. Of course, some of them are higher and some of them are lower depending on which things they're getting. Compare this with the taxpayer cost of more than $6,000 a month to be in a nursing home bed. The program's annual report includes stories about clients, and you can visit that online. And that's pretty much it. I just want to thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share. I can tell you that we are doing so many meals at the senior center and taking them out. We're delivering thousands of meals. They also are providing what they call congregate meals, which is other programs through Council on Aging, but a lot of folks who aren't part of the ESP program are also getting meals. On Thursdays, we have over 200 people drive by to pick up a week's supply of food at no cost. And so it's been quite helpful to a lot of seniors during all this crisis. And we're hoping to open the center one of these days, but it's a little bit challenging. How do you play cards and bingo and exercise with all this equipment and things like that? Plus all the testing that has to be done. They actually passed and said they could open the senior center on September 21st, I think, or 26th, whatever. And we're not while it's red. And there's also just so many rules and things that are going to be really difficult to follow through with limiting the number of people there. And it looks like by the regulations, all the seniors would have to be tested. I know all the employees have to be tested every 2 weeks, so there's a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through to do. But we're looking at and trying to plan how we would do all these things right now, and hoping that things will calm down a little bit and we'll be able to open up, because we're getting multiple calls every day from the seniors who really need to be out and be socializing, and they're like the rest of us. They want to get out of there and do something else. So thank you very much. And I'll ask if there's any questions. I'm happy to try to answer them. Or
Thanks for all your hard work, Jan. We appreciate all your work on this topic. I do have one question. You said most of them would not qualify for Medicaid. Is that true?
They're kind of in between. They're those folks that make a little too much money to be eligible for Medicaid. And so usually the ESP program is considered the program of last resort when they don't fit in anywhere else. And one of the things they'll do, if their status changes, that's one of the good things about having a case manager in there. They're always assessing what the situation, both financial and care-wise. And so if something changes and they do qualify for Medicaid, then they go on what's called the Passport program, which is a home program, again, that's supported by Passport.
Okay.
But again, you have to be even lower to qualify for that.
Can you just help, I guess, describe to me then the point that number 3 is trying to make? It's trying to compare how much we pay as taxpayers, and then saying if they were to instead be on Medicaid, it would cost that much. But if they're not eligible for Medicaid, I'm just trying to understand the correlation to the taxpayer on that number 3.
A lot of them, if they went into the nursing home, they would be, with the little savings that they have, they would end up going on Medicaid very quickly because of the cost of care. So if someone had some savings in the bank that kept them from qualifying for Medicaid, a month in the nursing home, they probably would qualify for Medicaid because of their low income and savings.
Thank you.
But while they're home, they would qualify for the elderly service program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, our second citizen comment this evening will be from Mr. Rick Pierce. Hello, Mr. Pierce. Can you state your name and address for the record for us?
Yes, Rick Pierce, 515 Kenridge Drive, but I spend most of my time at 1500 Central Avenue in the Chamber of Commerce building, where I have a cot. I'm here to share a little of our thoughts on the street levy. With me this evening is one of our board members, Chip Height, Vice President with First Financial Bank, and our Government Relations Co-Chair, Anita Scott Jones. So thank you for coming. So good evening, council members, Mayor Condrey, City Manager Palanek. I come to you this evening to speak of the street levy. The Chamber of Commerce does not take lightly the role we have within the communities we serve. When we learned that council voted to place the street levy on the ballot, I knew it was worthy of a discussion. So we reached out to council members Mulligan and Nenny and City Manager Palanek to learn more. At that session were members of our Government Relations Task Force. After much discussion and learning more about the process and the execution of the plan, we asked our elected officials to leave the call so we could further discuss. I am pleased to let all of you know that it was a unanimous decision to move the topic to the Chamber's Executive Committee for their thoughts and possible approval. At our September Executive Committee meeting, it was unanimous to support the levy and move the decision to the Chamber's Board of Directors to either endorse the levy or remain silent. I'm here to share with you this evening that at our September board meeting, the Board of Directors voted to endorse the 0.25% income tax levy to repair the roads in Middletown. Now, mind you, Chambers of Commerce are traditionally against any new taxes, as they can negatively impact your community. However, we feel this project is a little different. We'd like to thank this council for voting to place the decision in the hands of the residents to decide. We believe that this levy can achieve many things: improve our image, restore community pride with residents and businesses, improve our ability to attract more home buyers, especially with our new schools and the Chamber's new Future Ready Workforce Initiative, enhance current and future economic development efforts, and display public-private collaboration between residents, business, and government. But at the same time, much can go sideways. We believe it is important to be transparent and clear with current and future funding. We encourage council to consider and act on 4 items: to continue to fund the street improvements at their current levels and add the additional funds the new levy will provide. Ensure to the best of your ability that future councils cannot reverse this decision or redistribute the funds. We understand that bonding the proceeds
That's time.
should address most of this.
That's a 3-minute time.
Excuse me?
The citizen comment 3-minute time. Unless we happen to have waived that. I know we had for the senior levy, but
She went a little further.
that was understood before the meeting. I'm just trying to follow through with what was told to me prior to the meeting. I can't, I'm not, it's very difficult for me to be in a position to afford.
We share with the residents prior to the
Sorry, Mr.
election
Pierce, I can't.
process and the criteria
Mr. Pierce,
that will be used to identify which streets will be addressed.
Mr. Pierce, if the council would like to suspend the rules for a moment to allow him to finish, I think we could entertain that.
Yeah, I'd like to at least put that to a vote if we want to do that, but I can't just unilaterally.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Genku, call the roll, please.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes. You may continue.
Yes, thank you for the extended time. I apologize for that. So we encourage council to please consider and act on 4 items: to continue to fund the street improvements at their current levels and add the additional funds the new levy will provide. Ensure to the best of your ability that future councils cannot reverse this decision or redistribute the funds. We understand that bonding the proceeds should address most of this. Share with the residents prior to the election the process and the criteria that will be used and which streets will be addressed. Continue with the housing plan developed over 2 years ago. As we learned from the previous city administration, the neighborhoods causing us angst today are the same ones that caused us issues 57 years ago, and we need to advance those efforts as well. We will work to advocate for this levy so we can begin the process of rebuilding our city literally from the ground up. The future looks bright for us. As our Future Ready Task Force works with our educational partners to diligently solve the talent pipeline challenges for our area, and as Dayton and Cincinnati grow to meet us, it is very important that we are prepared to accept new businesses and residents to our city. This project is an important and necessary step. The Chamber appreciates the opportunity to engage and collaborate on the street levy and future projects that will impact our businesses. There are other issues in which the Chamber has a vested interest. One includes housing, which I mentioned earlier, and the other would be the future of our airport. I also know there will be some discussion this evening concerning a new sign ordinance. 2020 has been an extraordinary year, to say the least, for everyone, but especially for our small businesses. With this new sign ordinance, we ask that you please don't place one more hurdle for a business owner to navigate. Try and give them every opportunity to succeed through these very difficult times. Let's take this opportunity to tell the next generation of entrepreneurs that Middletown is business friendly and we welcome them to our city. In closing, we would like to be included in those difficult conversations to provide input and ensure our members and the business voice is heard. And thank you for the extra time.
Our third comment this evening is from Mr. Nicholas Cundiff. Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Is Nicholas Cundiff, 4619 Timber Trail Drive, Middletown, Ohio. I wasn't exactly sure that I did this right, but I just wanted to make sure that I had something to say about it. Is, I think, item E on your agenda tonight, for regarding to my termination. It is because I was not able to finish probation, but as of, I got this letter stating as such on Friday, and I feel like it doesn't accurately have all the context of why I was not able to finish probation. Last year in October, at the end of October, I was involved in a workplace injury involving my knee, and I still have not recovered from it. Full recovery is 9 to 12 months after surgery, and that is the reason why I was not able to finish probation. So I would like for something to be on record just stating that that is the reason why, because it shows in this letter, to me, it's mostly negative of why I wasn't. It seems like I was more incompetent when I received very good marks on how great of an employee I was for my supervisors and my coworkers. So if there could be something on the record, on my record, with just stating it was because of my injury, I would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from our legal counsel or city manager on the topic or advice on?
If Mr. Cundiff would like something placed in his file, he certainly could write a letter to the city manager and it would be placed in his file.
Does that sound acceptable to you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have our council comments. We'll start to my left with Mr. Milligan.
Good evening, Your Honor. No comments tonight, thank you.
Mr. Torrey.
I just wanted to remind everyone that early voting has begun, so you can go to the Butler County Board of Elections if you're in Butler County, which is 1802 Princeton Road in Hamilton, and you can vote anytime between now and Election Day. That's all, thank you.
Mr. Moon.
No comments tonight, Your Honor. Thank you.
And Ms. Denny.
My comments are similar to Ms. Vittori's comments, just encouraging everyone in the light of some of our public comments tonight to exercise your right to vote and be informed on the issues. Thank you.
And I have no comments this evening. Brings us to the city manager reports. Mr. Palahniuk.
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, good evening. Later this evening, to conclude the meeting, we will be doing our fiscal year 2021 budget presentation on the non-public safety portion of the budget. So I will be asking to defer most of my time for that presentation. However, I would like to take just a brief moment right now, if I could, to ask Economic Development Director Chriselle Lyons to come up and just give you a little briefing on an economic development grant program that you'll be hearing about in future meetings, and that you'll actually being asked to approve some awards. But I think it's obviously a lot better if Chriselle tells you kind of what we're thinking and what this program looks like before you ultimately see it as part of the meeting. So, Chriselle.
Good afternoon. As Mr. Palahniuk indicated, next meeting I will be asking for the authorization of 4 facade improvement grants. These applications originally came to us as small business entrepreneurial grant assistance. And in reviewing the budget, I realized that we had $70,000 available with UDAG funding. And I asked our department historian, Debbie Garrison, what is the UDAG funding? What can I use it for? And she explained it to me. It was federal funding that originally came to the city, distressed communities, back in the late 70s. And since then, our department has been allocating anywhere between $40,000 to $60,000 a year for facade improvements, not necessarily facade, improvements to downtown buildings. Over the past couple of years, DMI kind of took the program over, although they haven't authorized any grants since then. So what I wanted to do is clear out this line item. We've had it in economic development long enough. Put it in place and let's see some action. So we've got 4 projects. It's the Reed Clock Building, the Castile Building, and then the other building doesn't really have a name. It's where Grandpa Joe's and Brent's Butts and Fast Lane Subs are going, and the Parrot Lofts. All the grant money will be extended to all of these applications. We've vetted them, we've looked at them. 3 of the buildings are in the historic district. They've all received authorization from the Historic Commission that the improvements are correct, and it's a reimbursable grant. So they have to do the work and submit receipts, invoices, cancel checks, and then the award will be issued after that, so that we make sure that the work is complete and done. Let's see. In addition, I just wanted to make you aware too, at the next council meeting, I'm also going to ask for a supplemental appropriation to appropriate some of the unused funds to go for next, so that we can extend all of the funds out and cancel this line item out. I really support this program because I think it's going to be an immediate and visual impact to downtown. It's going to help support our businesses. We've got 2 new businesses coming up in the Grandpa Joe's building. I think Brent's Butt, you guys have heard about it, and Fast Lane Subs. And I think it's just going to make us more efficient. It's just clean things up. We're going to see immediate impact, 4 to 6 months. We get the receipts and it's done. No more compliance. It's not general fund money, it's federal money. We get it out on the streets and we keep it in our community. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right, well, I hope to see you next council meeting and support. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Ms. Skanku, please present the consent agenda for us.
For your consideration this evening, we have to approve the City Council minutes from August 18th and September 1st, 2020, to receive and file Board and Commission minutes from the Civil Service Commission August the 20th, 2020, to receive and file oaths of office for Jesse Lovejoy and Sydney Hensley, to confirm the personnel appointments of Nikita Lancaster to the position of Assistant Public Works and Utilities Director in the Department of Public Works and Utilities, Jamie Hurley to the position of Animal Control Officer in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police, Scott Renner and Joshua Singleton to the position of Patrol Officer in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police, to confirm the termination of Nicholas Cundiff, Corrections Officer in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police, to confirm the reinstatement of Mark Sam Allen to position of Sergeant in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police, and to authorize the City Manager to enter into a contract with Vickers Demolition for construction of a perimeter fencing around the property formerly known as the Middletown Paperboard site in the area of Verity and Girard.
I move to approve the issues and actions set forth in the consent agenda.
Second. Can we just clarify that the meeting minutes for City Council were August 18th and September 1st? There was a typo on the screen as the 15th of September was the second date, and it was corrected in the updated agenda, but not on the screen version. You stated the correct date. I just want to confirm for the record.
Okay.
Ms. Skanku, please call the roll for us.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
On the motion agenda tonight is to authorize a contract with Municipal and Contractor Sealing Products, Cincinnati, Ohio, in an amount not to exceed $150,000 for the rehabilitation and relining of manholes.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skanku, please call the roll.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Item B is to approve the purchase of an Avaya telephone system from Integration Partners Corporation in an amount not to exceed $267,625.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skanku, please call the roll.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Item C, to authorize the transfer of property to adjacent property owners through the vacant side lot program. Address 3505 Glencoe Avenue for $500 to Michael and Alberta Colley, and 1712 Winona Drive for $500 to Wayne E. Wardlow.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skanku, please call the roll.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
And Ms. Cohen, will you be acting as our legal representative this evening?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Can you please provide us, or present the legislation for us?
Yes, ma'am. Before we get started, we do have 4 items that we are asking you to consider as an emergency this evening. So I'd ask for a motion to waive charter requirements for 2 readings and immediate enactment regarding Resolution R 2020-28, Ordinance O 2020-48, Ordinance O 2020-49, and Resolution R 2020-29.
I move that the charter provision requiring readings on 2 separate days be waived and that Resolution R 2020-28, Ordinance O 2020-48, 49, and Resolution 2020-29 be declared emergencies and read one time only.
Second?
Ms. Kanku, please call the roll.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Thank you. The first matter we have is a second reading of Ordinance O 2020-47, an ordinance amending various sections of the Middletown Development Code of the Middletown Codified Ordinances.
So move for adoption. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, so move for adoption.
Second.
Do we have any comments about this legislation item? Okay, Ms. Kanku, please call the roll.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
okay. Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Next matter is Resolution R 2020-28, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of coronavirus aid relief and economic security or CARES Act funding and the transfer and supplemental appropriations associated with the approval of these expenditures and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Do we have any comments about this one?
Yes, if I might, Madam Mayor, members of council, this is in effect, the first tranche of the CARES Act funding that have been distributed to the city in the amount of $1,551,766.97. And as you all know, there is a very limited time remaining for us to ultimately encumber and/or expend these dollars. And early, there were a lot of restrictions attached to these. More recently, there have been some determinations that allow us a little bit more flexibility in terms of the way we spend these dollars. Essentially, originally, it was not to simply supplement lost revenues, but to provide those kinds of things that came exclusively as a result of the pandemic, or providing personal protective equipment, furthering social distancing, providing greater safety for both employees, citizens, etc. There have been some determinations more recently that you can be more flexible in assigning the work done by first responders, particularly firefighter EMTs. But what is critical for us to make certain in our expenditure of these funds is to have this become an action before City Council so that you are authorizing these expenditures specifically, and that our determination of the way that we're using them are determined to be consistent with both our policy and with what we believe is appropriate for the CARES Act. So this act itself, we think, is pretty important because it serves as that documentation later if someone says, did you use these consistent with both the act and your policy? So I would ask Jake was there anything further? I think that really was important to us to make sure that that was done.
Mr. Palaniuk or Mr. Burton, I feel like I've been hearing more and more about maybe a second round either from the federal government or from the state releasing more funds. Are you guys hearing anything about that, or am I mixing up news reports in my head here?
No, you're absolutely correct, and I was going to make that as part of my presentation for the budget upcoming, but yes, there is a second distribution. It's actually more than the first. It's a little over $1.7 million.
Will there be more flexibility in that as well as?
The same flexibility that we've been offered recently will also extend to that, and also that will allow us to go till December the 30th, basically. So the conclusion of the year, we can encumber those funds.
Okay, I'll save my last question for the budget presentation. Thank you.
All righty.
Any other comments? Okay, Ms. Kanku, please call the roll.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
The next matter is Ordinance O 2020-48, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing the purchase of a power load cot system and associated equipment from Stryker and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Madam Mayor, members of council, this is also attached to CARES Act funding. This is the purchase of a power load-out cot for the fire department for first responders. It allows them to create greater distance between them and the actual patient that might be serving, providing healthcare services to. It is entirely CARES Act eligible, so the entire $43,614.59 expenditure will come from the CARES Act dollars. Because this is a very specialized piece of equipment, there's really no one else other than Stryker that produces these pieces of equipment. It is a sole source, so it wasn't bid out, so we're asking you to approve it as a sole source as well.
Any other comments? Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll? Take your time.
I can. Mr. Belligan. Mr. Mulligan.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Thank you.
And before anyone's too concerned, it is the allergies in this room.
I got choked on my water.
Yeah. The fourth matter this evening is Ordinance 02020-49, an ordinance authorizing the contract for the purchase of 7 Lucas devices from Stryker through the ODAS Purchasing Program and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Again, this is very similar to the last item in that this purchase is entirely CARES Act eligible. So the $138,380.13 cost will be provided exclusively through the CARES Act funds. This also is for the fire department. It is through the Stryker Corporation, purchased in this case through the State Purchasing Cooperative Contract for 7 hands-free CPR devices, so that again, as a EMT or paramedic is working with a patient, moving them from one location to another, maybe upstairs or down or whatever, this can allow them to be entirely hands-free and have the CPR process continue, which again provides greater distance, greater safety for both the EMT as well as the patient in this case. So we would ask for your approval.
Any comments from council? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Fifth matter is Resolution R 2020-29, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Middletown, Counties of Butler and Warren, State of Ohio for the period ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Madam Mayor, City Council, in this case, we're asking an additional appropriation of $150,000 to cover expected outside legal services for the remainder of the year. You're probably aware of the fact that particularly a few issues that have caused substantially more legal cost for us than probably some others, and certainly throughout the year. Some things attached to the airport as well as the Manchester, although in both cases those are really winding down, so we feel like those are going to have not that much going forward, but in order to cover the expenses that we know are in place, we would need this additional appropriation.
And just to confirm, I guess council had approved on the 21st of January additional funds monthly for Frost Brown Todd. I am under the understanding that that was concluded in August.
Yes, we filed a notice to terminate that portion of the contract. If you remember back, that was effectively working on a month-to-month as needed, so we furnished the notice to terminate in August. I believe the last payment then is in September under the terms of the contract. Any outstanding monies that were on that appropriation will be utilized to pay the outstanding bills that we have for services there.
Okay, so we paid a little under, what, I guess $70,000 additional this year. to Frost Brown Todd.
I think by my calculation, it was $52,500.
I know we can't control the past, yet are still stuck in many cases paying for mistakes. So I know our leadership and Mr. Palaniuk's working very, very diligently on reducing significantly our legal expenses in the future, and I appreciate that.
Mr. Palaniuk and I have had extensive conversations about the best way to handle this issue moving forward, and I'm confident we'll be able to address this starting in the new year.
Any other comments from council? Okay, Ms. Skanku.
Well, I would just say that, I mean, some of these events are beyond our control. I mean, the city or no organization can control when it is sued, and we must defend the interests, our legal interests, with the best talent we have available. So it's not fun to spend money on legal expenses, but it's a necessary expense.
Ms. Skanku, please call the roll.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Next matter is ordinance O 2020-50, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with Polydyne Incorporated for the purchase of polymer for the use at the water reclamation facility for the year 2021, and it's here this evening for our first reading.
Mr. Palaniuk, do you have any comments for that one to present to us?
Fairly straightforward. This is for the purchase of polymer for the wastewater treatment plant. It's a chemical that is used to dewater the sludge so that ultimately it can be land applied. The type of polymer that is purchased in this case is coming from a certain vendor because it was determined to be the most effective in facilitating that dewatering process. So there are real differences in polymer. So again, it's a sole source rather than putting it out to bid and saying, hey, anybody that provides this can, because in fact, the efficacy of this particular chemical is much different depending on who the vendor is. So we're asking that this be a sole source provider.
Any comments from council?
Excuse me. We will move on to ordinance O 2020-51, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing an amendment to the contract with Air Products for the purchase of carbon dioxide for use at the water treatment plant for the year 2021, here for a first reading.
Mr. Palaniuk, would you like to present anything?
Another sort of routine matter. This is the purchase of carbon dioxide for, in this case, the water treatment plant. It is purchased over a multi-year contract. This contract's been in place for quite a number of years. Currently in the contract that goes between 2018 and 2022. In this case, they're adjusting the contract from $95 a ton to $98 a ton, so $3 a ton more. The entire yearly increase will amount to about $825. Total cost not to exceed $26,950. This historically has really been the only bidder. There are very few that provide it. So we're very comfortable with this bid and continuing.
Any comments or questions from council? Thank you.
Next matter will be ordinance O 2020-52, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing purchases of asphalt by the city purchasing agent in 2021, here for a first reading.
Mr. Palaniuk?
Routine yearly purchase of asphalt that we use in paving projects becomes very important that the asphalt producers are in close proximity to where the paving gets done. So in this case, we really only have 2 asphalt plants that fit that understanding. So what we're asking is that for our not to exceed yearly budgeted amount of $380,000 for the actual purchase of asphalt, that we award that to either one of the 2 local asphalt plants, and then our Director of Public Works would make decisions on any given time when the purchases have to occur, because there will be changes in capacity on any given day that might have to move from one to the other. And since they are local and they're very competitive within the same market, the prices tend to be very competitive. So it's really more about the flexibility of knowing that we can move from one to the other at a time when we really need to buy it at a short notice. So in this case, it's kind of a bid to acknowledge and to allow both local plants to serve us, and depending on who would have it available, at the most timely time when we need it, and then we would use them.
Any comments or questions from council? Thank you.
Excuse me. Last matter is Resolution R 2020-30, a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for project year 35, requesting funding for the resurfacing and reconstruction of various streets throughout the city, restoration of curbs, gutters, driveway aprons, and sidewalks deemed defective by the city, installation or repairs of handicap ramps, catch basins, and drainage, to enter into agreements for such funding. Here for a first reading.
Mr. Palaniuk?
Madam Mayor, City Council, this is our yearly application for grant funding for street work through the Ohio Public Works Commission under the so-called Project Year 35 program. In this case, as part of $3,200,000 worth of total project cost, we would be seeking a grant of $1,100,000, providing $1 million in our local share, and then having our stormwater fund provide $600,000, and then actual assessments that would be passed on to individual homeowners would account for $1,255,000.
Any comments or questions from council? Okay, that brings us to our budget presentation.
If I may, if we can take just maybe a minute or two, we just want to make sure we're set up here and we're ready to go. So I just want to. Informal about this. I think I can see it better, and maybe it's just easier for me to stand up here. I'm more used to doing it this way. So, I'm going to let Jake run the clicker, and that at any given time, if there are questions, please don't hesitate to jump in. As well, Jake will jump in at various times to just give you further color on some of these issues, background, or answer some of your questions.
Would it be helpful for Jake to be near a microphone if that was, I don't know.
Or Jake, or yeah, if you want to come up there or sit there, either way.
I didn't mean to ruin your flow over there, Jake.
So, as you can imagine, producing a department, and to literally every one of our department heads and their staff who really worked incredibly hard to produce this document, because as you can imagine, it was really difficult because of the level of uncertainty. And throughout this process, there was incredible uncertainty. And as we moved along, we were literally waiting for projections and or actual results of what was the income tax coming in, how had it changed since the last week, how had it changed since the last month, and then not knowing, will CARES Act funds come in? If they do, how much? How can we use them? How creative can we be? What is the timing for it? So having said all that, the fact that we've been able to produce the budget we have, we're really pleased with. And again, my commendation goes out to Jake and to everybody in the city, because I think we've actually really been able to provide certainty that we're going to cover, the standard services that the city has come to be really accustomed to, without laying anybody off, without really eliminating any positions, and continuing a lot of the things that we've done in the past. So what we'd like to do is kind of give you some background on how we got here, and then kind of run through a lot of the things that you can expect to see here, and then just kind of follow through. And I'm going to kind of follow through the PowerPoint. But note, and this was a question that came up earlier, and I think it's really important to note, the CARES Act funds have really been our salvation and been incredibly important to this budget and to allowing us to do the things that you're going to be able to see. So that first general fund distribution that you just approved its various uses tonight was for $1,551,766.97. Since that time, we have been authorized to get a second distribution for $1,758,797. So the combined general fund CARES Act that we have been approved for is $3,310,563.97. So since they have done more in the way of allowing flexibility in the use of these, particularly for our public safety folks, this is really going to make a huge difference in allowing us to fill some of the holes and make this budget work for next year. Also, under HUD programming, the Community Development Block Grants, we have gotten 2 different allocations. The first one, $431,289. The second one to $271,165 for a combined total of $702,454. Obviously, we have to use those consistent with Department of Housing and Urban Development federal guidelines, but at the same time, they've been somewhat flexible compared to the way they usually operate, and this is helpful in supplementing, many of the things that service our low to moderate income folks at a time when, we might otherwise be having to use general fund dollars to do it. Another portion of the CARES Act came to transit for $702,000, which again, you'll see the impact on this on our budget in a helpful way. And finally, the airport received $69,000 in specific airport allocations. So when you look at all those together, that's $4,784,017.97 in monies that have come from the CARES Act specifically that will make a really significant difference to our ability to continue to provide the services that we expect. So when we began this process, we started out going to department heads basically saying, look, we developed a 2021 budget and imagined sort of the standard things, doing the things that we've done in the past, having certain wage increases that were consistent with what we'd seen in the past, but we need to make $3 million cuts from there. So we basically went back to our department heads and said, based on your percentage of what the general fund is, your goal is come back with at least that amount of cuts. And to everyone's credit, they did remarkable work in basically fulfilling that in almost every case. But then based on June 30th, we realized we were doing a little bit better on our income tax receipts coming in. By the end of July, we had made up $1 million. So that in the end, this budget reflects about $2,091,000 that we had to make up from where we started, either through cutting expenses or finding additional revenues. So as we look at our PowerPoint, some of the significant changes that you're going to see in this budget that I wanted to highlight is we have allowed for a 1% cost of living raise for all of our non-union employees, as well as contemplating that amount being available for the fire union, which of course is still subject to collective bargaining employees. So all of the cost of living raises, other than that, are based obviously on collective bargaining agreements. We can't change those. We have provided for what it's called for. But in looking to the future, for those that we have some level of control over, in one case, the non-union employees, in the other, that which is yet to be bargained with the fire department, what this budget provides for is 1% cost of living. Now, it also continues to provide for the step increases. So really, employees have the opportunity in this case to continue getting step increases, as well as, if you're non-union and or fire, the opportunity for 1% as a cost of living on top of that. Really, I find that quite remarkable, given the circumstances we're in, given the pandemic. And I remember being in this profession in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, happened to be working in North Carolina at the time. We had 4 years in a row where no one got any raise of any kind. So, that was in a recession. This certainly is a recession. So at the end of the day, I guess we're actually quite pleased that we're able to include that amount in there. There are no performance-based incentive programs in this for obvious reasons. One of the things that's purely serendipitous but that is helpful to us in this budget is last year in our budget there was technically 27 bi-weekly pays that came in last year. This year it's 26. That actually makes a pretty significant difference in this budget, not having to pick up that extra, so that made a difference for us. There is no increase in the city's share of health insurance. That typically has been 6% year to year, but kind of 2 reasons for that. Number one, we are able to fully repay the general fund loan to the employee benefits as of this year, 2020. So there's no requirement to add additional repayments in next year. The second part of that is in a pandemic year when so much of healthcare was closed down, and since we are self-funded for healthcare and claims-based, we did not see the kinds of numbers of claims that you would typically see in a regular year, because anything that was elective, anything that was physical therapy, in many cases just wasn't done. Now, that's deferred and we could see more in the future, but obviously this year at least, it made a significant difference. So that's why there was no need, and you'll see as we go through the numbers later that that fund is still in very good shape. So we don't have any concerns about it at this point. Income tax revenue in fiscal year 2021 is projected to decrease by 3% from the actual fiscal year 2020 level, and this budget reflects that. So if we go on to our next slide. There is no city funding for transit. Now, typically that would take at least $120,000, but if you recall earlier I said the CARES Act provided us $702,000 in transit-specific funding. So given that amount, clearly there was no reason for us to transfer that amount for transit. We're not transferring $100,000 to computer replacement this year. We feel like we've caught up on a number of things. We're in pretty good shape, but again, it's just a matter of economics, needing to make cuts. That was one that wasn't a priority. It does provide for the 2 dedicated community-oriented police officers that were happening as a result of the recently approved COPS grant funding. The other thing that we're proposing in here, and it contemplates about $250,000 in added revenues, is a per transaction fee being charged on all of our credit card transactions, beginning with the beginning of the year. We basically currently allow people to use credit cards to pay virtually any of their payments to the city. And as most of you know, credit card service providers charge us anywhere between 2.5%, 3.5%. So if you pay with cash, or you pay with a debit card, or you pay with a check, we get the money, we get the full amount. If you're paying with a credit card, we're giving you the opportunity to get 30 days to pay. You're earning points or airline miles or whatever. And we're saying that is a convenience. If you want to make that choice to use a credit card, we want to at least cover the costs associated with it. So this would do nothing to add any additional revenue on top of it, but simply cover the cost that a person is causing to the city as a result of using the credit card. Because it is a choice. You would still have the opportunity to pay in any of those other fashions with no additional fee, but if you're using the credit card, this would require the fee to be placed on it. Other changes as we look here, this does not contemplate any rate increases to the water utility. It does contemplate a 5% sewer rate increase. This is consistent with and supportive of the long-term control plan projections. A little bit less than I think last year, but it will continue to provide what we need as we're moving forward. Calls for a solid waste increase of $1 per month to cover the cost to the city by the Rumpke contract. It is, again, not generating any additional revenues, but simply covering the added cost of the contract. It would move from $15.50 a month to $16.50. We also contemplate a stormwater fee increase of 75 cents per month that would cover increased curb work related to increased paving. That would move from $4 to $4.75. So if you take all of those various things together, a minimum utility bill would increase by $2.89 per month, about 5.2%, moving from $55.55 to $58.44. The average user, who uses about 600 cubic feet of water, they would see an increase of about $3.99 a month, or about 4.5%. So if you look at the 2021 budget in terms of our expected general fund balance, first at year-end 2020, our belief is that we will complete the year at $6,901,657, or about 21.3%. Well above our goal of a minimum 15%. However, in the fiscal year 2021, we are budgeting some of that general fund balance so that at the conclusion of the year, if we stay according to the budget, we would finish the year at $5,884,000, about 16.7%, still above the 15%, but obviously using some of that rainy day fund on a very rainy day year, as you might imagine. In this budget, we have actual decreases, I mean, in real terms, not for inflation, but in real terms of the cost of our non-public safety personnel of some 3.8%, or $193,000. Actual decrease in public safety personnel cost of about 2.3%, or $493,000.
I'm sorry, Mr. Palin, is any of that, go back one slide.
Yeah.
The 193 and 493 at the bottom, how much of that is related to 27 pays versus 26 pay periods?
I'm gonna ask Jake that. Jake,
Yeah, so it's a combination really of that going from 27 to 26, and then also particularly in the public safety case from retirements and replacing those individuals with entry-level officers and firefighters.
So it doesn't constitute a decrease in personnel numbers, it's simply the amount being paid because of the personnel in place.
That is correct, yes.
yes, that's correct.
And is it also correct that the EMT classification, a lot of those guys are starting to come on versus the paramedic, and that's also assisting? It looked like that as I dug into the numbers.
It is, there's no question, yeah, that continues. So as we hire new folks, as the older tenured folks retire, that is the case. But yes, Mayor, absolutely, you're correct, and that was our point, and we're, glad to be able to say that we are not decreasing numbers of personnel. On the employee benefits fund that I talked about a little bit earlier, when we look at this, so in 2019, we began the fund balance with only $220,646. Revenues for the year were $5.7 million. Expenditures were only $4.8 million, but then we did a loan payback that year of $500,000, so we ended the year at $687,000 balance. Then our estimate for this year, 2020, and this is effective August 31st, again, beginning with that $687,000 balance, we think revenues will be about $6.1 million, expenditures at about $5.2 million, so we'll end the year with a balance now of $1.5 million. From that 1.5, we would make that final loan payment covering all of the remainder back to the general fund, back to this fund from the general fund, $316,430, which would then allow 2021 to begin the balance at $1.2 million. Then the expectation that revenues and expenditures will be very close, so that ending the balance at the end of next year will be about $1.2 million. So starting 2019 with a fund balance at $220,000, concluding 2021 with a fund balance of around $1.2 million. So adding about $1 million to the fund balance in there between the beginning of 2019 and the end of 2021, and having paid off that loan. So we feel good about that.
I'm sorry, just clarification, is the general fund loaning money to that health benefits or vice versa? I thought it was the general fund that was making the loan.
Yes, that's correct. In 2015 and 2016 are when those loans occurred, and we've been paying them off over the 2017 through current year.
Okay, I might have just misheard then. So, all right, I understand.
Yeah, I apologize. As I was saying that, I know I sounded a little bit confused. So I think that was cleared up. Thank you. The next sheet that you have is taking kind of an analysis of the overall general fund and really focusing on 2021. And of course, against 2020, you're seeing what the actual dollar change and then by percentage basis. And you can see that in every case, city council, city manager, including communication, finance department, information systems, economic development, administrative services, public works, utilities, and non-departmental, there was an actual decrease. The singular increases in planning, and the sole reason for that is purchasing a vehicle for that. Otherwise, there would be no increase there. So at the end of the day, in combination, it goes down by 4.4%, about $426,000. So the 2021 budget, $9.215 million compared to $9.641. Now, individually looking at some of these individual departments. Of course, city manager, you see the numbers there. There is a decrease of 12.1%. Communications is down 38%. So total expenditures down 22%. I'd like to just go over some of these goals and or changes as well, highlight those. Obviously, one of the most important things we're looking at is providing an ongoing and effective response of flexibility and adaptation during the COVID-19 pandemic and its immediate aftermath. And hopefully we get out of this soon. Hopefully there's a vaccine, but obviously there is the effects of this and there is the immediate aftermath. So that will affect us well into 2021. And we have to be cognizant of that and continue to manage with that in mind. We also very much want to identify and maximize very strategic economic development and redevelopment projects so that our resources are used to the absolute best ability, that we're looking at quality over quantity, and that we're having the greatest chance for success with the greatest return on investment. We want to develop a long-term capital improvement program that is sustainable, that can be implemented with adequate reinvestment, particularly in our city-owned buildings and infrastructure. And we'll look to focus on our strategic planning on that issue particularly. We want to identify and pursue strategies for long-term revenue growth. We know that we're in difficult times if that isn't solved going forward. I would like to fully evaluate the opportunities for some reorganization within the municipal organization. Again, trying to create greater effectiveness and efficiency. One of the things you'll see here is the summit program expenses of $30,000 were moved from the city manager's budget to the health department. It really involved expenditures that were exclusively health related, and for the sake of transparency, it should be with health because that's really what it's doing, it's what it's accomplishing. There also is a separate line item now created for the annual fireworks and recreational activities of $28,000 that was moved from communications to non-departmental. Again, transparency really didn't have anything to do with communications. It should be when those other kinds of things that are similar within our non-departmental budget. So hence you're seeing these large deductions from these budgets. There were not large reductions. These were primarily as a result of the removal of those to places that they were more appropriately placed. The finance budget, I would ask Jake to comment specifically. Obviously, the things that are of most importance and on his goals and changes. So, Jake, if you'd like to.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll highlight the one large decrease in budget from 2020 to 2021 is the income tax department. And I included it here with general fund because all of the income tax revenue flows into that fund and then is transferred to the general fund. So when we reduce expenditures in the income tax fund, basically that means that money can then be transferred to the general fund. So it does have a true impact on the general fund. We were able to decrease that by almost $100,000, mostly due to the fact that our municipal court has agreed this year. We are using them to do our process serving. So on those who do not file or do not pay income taxes, we were using a contractor to do that service. And the court has graciously agreed to do that. We've seen very good results so far. We just started it a couple of months ago, but it's been very good so far. So we will continue that into 2021. As far as the primary goals and changes, we will continue to produce documents that we hope will get the awards for the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association Budget Awards, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Reporting Award, and the Popular Annual Financial Reporting Award. So we will continue that and hope to produce things that make it easy for both council and the public to understand and see what the finance department's doing. And then in March of this year, we rolled out Invoice Cloud for utility bills, which allows an auto pay option. Allows you to store different information, get your bills via email, via text. You can really pay anyway, and there's a lot of different options with it. And it's also a little cheaper on the fees end as far as from the credit card companies. So we're going to look to implement that portal with our other departments, particularly those departments that take large amounts of payments, health department, income tax department, things of that nature as we continue to move forward. Finance will work in conjunction with IT on that. Obviously, a big portion of that's really IT work and determining which ones can be converted, which ones make the most sense to convert first, and things of that nature. But we will continue to work on that as we get into 2021.
And Jake makes a really good point on the invoice cloud. We're not just simply trying to pass on costs of those credit cards to our customers. We're trying to do everything we can to keep those costs down as well. And the invoice cloud allows us to do that. So the costs, such as they are, at least will go down under that program. When we take a look at information systems for 2021, very little change. We got a 1.1% decrease. Pretty much status quo, trying to provide, high quality technology support throughout the organization to all our departments. One big change here, and you actually approved it tonight, is for the department to fully complete that telephone system upgrade. Now that it's been approved, they'll do that full installation. They'll program all the software. They'll do everything as far as putting the handsets in place and getting everybody up to speed and having a much better system. You look at that system, it goes back to 2000. So a 20-year-old technology system for voice and data is, as you can imagine, pretty archaic and could not be supported by anything anymore. So it really was time. They're upgrading network infrastructure to install a citywide high-speed wireless network to link all the locations. And as we had noted, that $100,000 in computer replacement would not occur in 2021. As we look at planning, the change here, again, looks like an increase. It's really just the purchase of the vehicle that was needed by that department. Here, they're combining code enforcement efforts so that planning and zoning, police code enforcement can be more efficient. Adoption of the implementation of the city comprehensive plan. You should be seeing soon, again, Parks master plan, the master plan, several of these things you've been waiting for some time. Updating the city historic preservation plan. Jake talked about the online permitting submittal, making it much more user-friendly. Going to do more proactive enforcement, a lot more engagement with the community to educate on issues related to zoning, code regulations, and processes. On economic development, you see about an 8.7% decrease. That is exclusively tied to not having the need to purchase the machinery and equipment that was going to go with the Getz Tower, because our plan will not to be moving our economic development to that space. We are, as you probably remember, obligated to lease 2,500 square feet of the first floor of the Getz Tower as part of that redevelopment project. Our agreement calls for us to pay $28 a square foot for that, $70,000 a year. We feel like we can continue to operate quite well in the existing city space, and we would be better served by subleasing that space to a high-quality tenant that we can recruit to bring additional business and jobs downtown, and to get back a good portion, if not all of, that $28 a square foot that we're obligated to pay. So given that, we also don't need to make those $55,500 in machinery and equipment that was included in that budget. The airport, which is the next one, we see in operations the change of a 24.2% decrease. That is in large measure because there's a $140,000 decrease in fueling purchases, and of course with that a big decrease in fuel sale revenues. We're just not seeing the kinds of volume that we had, reducing a number of line items, and then all personnel services will be moved to contractual services. And I think we talked about this, getting away from city employees and having those services provided through a contract. Under the airport capital, this would be the FAA ODOT grant. We estimate about $504,000 would be grant funded. And this year, again, because of all the CARES Act funding, because there's kind of a surplus in many regards, we believe they won't be requiring any local match. Typically, it would be a 95.5. We won't even have to do the 5%. So we think we'd be able to put all $504,000 to go to the next highest priority safety project, which would be the moving of the one taxiway. Next area is administrative services. There you see the various subdivisions under Administrative Services Department, including administration, the community center, law, HR, building inspection, building maintenance. In total, the expenditures are down by 3.9%, with various changes in several of those divisions. You can see the community center line item allocation remains the same at $120,000. HR is going down by 10%. Building inspection is the one that's up by 8.2%. And then our goals, and I would ask Susan if there's any specific areas or issues you'd like to highlight on this particular. Otherwise, we could just go through the slide, but was there anything that you'd like to offer?
I think the biggest highlight for next year is going to be continuing to implement the housing policy and then really stepping up on the demolition and enforcement on blighted structures and those that are vacant around town and really stepping up the enforcement on those.
And I think also, as Susan had indicated earlier, we're going to take a really close look at the way we provide legal services coming up here and really take a look at balancing what is our ratio between providing in-house legal counsel versus outside legal counsel. Can we do that a little bit more efficiently? Can we do that with some cost savings and still get the kind of service and responsiveness that we really want? And we think we do have some abilities to look at that, and we hope that we can be more efficient in that regard. Taking a look at public works. Engineering side, 2021, down by 8.7%. On the street lighting, down by 2.8%, largely, as you might imagine, as a result of the changeover to LED. We're hoping we might actually achieve a little bit more on that one ultimately, but we need to be a little bit conservative as we make estimates, particularly because sometimes we don't get as good a data from Duke Energy as we'd like, so we have to rely on some things, but again, we hope that it's better. Parks maintenance down 3.2%, so the combination, all of these expenditures down slightly from 2020 at just over $2 million to $1,988,000. In our Public Works 2021 goals for administration, obviously Scott's very involved with and needs to continue to implement that long-term control plan, and that includes continue the sewer system condition assessment program. The design build process will be moving forward for that downtown storage basin project. Scott, what is the year ultimately that thing has to be? 2026. 2026. But an awful lot of work in planning and design leading up to that. Then, of course, developing further the water system asset management program. Looking at traffic, electronic maintenance, goals for the parks. Traffic calming, they've been able to achieve a lot. When you look at Main Street, you look at what's going to happen with Central Avenue. That's a continuing focus. Also, the replacement program for some of the older LED traffic signals and signal heads at various intersections. They'll be updating additional intersections with new control equipment that will be compatible with the Centrax Central Master System. And of course, we're all looking forward to finalizing the development of the Parks Master Plan. Scott, any comments about those or other issues that you'll be looking at?
Is the traffic study done? When is? Sorry.
Come on.
I'm too far away. I was just
Come on
asking if
down.
the traffic study was done, if it's completed. Because I know we've talked about a couple of things. Is it part of that? I know we were doing like the traffic study, like before.
So we're also doing a comprehensive transportation plan. Now, it was delayed a little bit because of the management changes and then COVID, but that will be incorporated actually into the master plan. We'll have a chapter within that master plan dedicated to that, but we'll have a specific data from that transportation plan to put into the master plan.
So when will that be done?
What was the master plan deadline? First quarter of
21. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I know there's lots of plans.
I might add too that as soon as we're done tonight, obviously, we're gonna open this up to any and all questions that you have. But our next meeting, that I think we're gonna do as a special meeting, independent of the regular council meeting, is we're gonna hopefully have all kinds of time for you to go in whatever detail you'd like into all of these issues, and have more question and answer. But obviously, any questions that you have, please feel free to ask those. On the next sheet, we have kind of the local street paving program. That first item at the top is our contractor paving. We're looking at $3,955,000 that will be done. Of that, $2,955,000 is coming either from grant or enterprise funds, and it breaks it down there. Breaks down every one of the street sections that are being done, that are planned within this budget. One thing I will point out is that next line, which is city crew paving. These last number of years, we've been able to do a certain amount of paving with our city crews. This budget does not allow for any of that to be done this year. Now, again, there's a lot of street work being done here. It's being done contractually, it's being done through grant projects, it's being done through these various programs. But as far as our budget ability, the one area that had to be cut was the city crew paving.
So what does that do then? What will that personnel be working on in place of paving?
Scott?
So that's actually our normal street maintenance crews. So throughout the year, that's the same people that will fill potholes, plow snow in the winter. The actual street paving they do, I mean, that only probably takes like a couple weeks out of the year. In fact, it's really all hands on deck when we do that. We're utilizing not only the street maintenance people, but also stormwater people for trucking if needed, and others. So it's really not a huge, again.
Well, are there, but yeah, so that equipment's just gonna sit idle for an entire year?
Well, we'll still use it so the paver will still, and all the equipment, we'll still use for major patching and repairs. For example, if we have a large water, like a water cut, or, recently when we had the sewer repairs on 2nd Avenue, we used the paver for that. We'll use it beyond just for that local city crew paving.
Okay.
What are the major expenses in the city crew paving that we're
Well, this is
saving by not doing that?
This is purely the cost of asphalt
Okay,
we're saving.
so it's materials.
When we buy asphalt, there's this money to buy the asphalt.
So instead, I mean, are those just not going to get done, those projects, or we're putting those to a contract to get done?
Well, no, that small portion, I think it's around 300,000 if I recall.
350, I think it was.
Well, yeah, okay, 350. It just wouldn't. It would get delayed until the following year, or until the budget allows
Okay.
that portion of it.
All right, thank you, sir. And so then, of course, there is the ODOT urban paving program at $2,560,000. There's the ODOT safety project, $400,000, and the water line replacement projects that would include paving at 100% water fund. And each of those have a series of projects. So if there are any questions at all about any of those specific projects, obviously Scott's prepared to talk about that. But there will be quite a lot of work being done. The one area, as we've discussed, is we have cut out the asphalt purchases to do our own local street paving.
And maybe it's just semantics. I'm sorry to and Scott, no need to come down again. But so there's going to be water line replacement projects. These will not be handled by city crews. These will be handled by outside contractors. Okay.
So then looking overall at our 2021 capital projects, when you look at the general capital fund in local street paving, there is $1,100,000. $50,000 is dedicated to the gateway enhancements at I-75. State Road 73 Germantown Road to the city limits is a little over $2.5 million. The ODOT safety project at First Avenue is $400,000, and then $140,000 for traffic, parks, and buildings combined. So that's $4.2 million in general capital. And the water fund will be providing capital at an amount of $3,010,000, broken down as $500,000 for various water facility upgrades, $2 million to the system replacement program, the ongoing infrastructure replacement, $200,000 to the asset management plan, $300,000 to city building pavers, and you'll see $300,000 also to that in the stormwater and the sewer, so that in combination there's $900,000. And that is more than just the city building pavers. It's that whole series of pavers around this building, as well as sort of the roof to the police department, and the structural issues and the integrity of that combined. Very expensive project just because of the nature of the way this building is built. And I'm sure Scott can address it and talk to it if you'd like. He knows a great deal about it. It's not cheap, so that's why you're seeing $900,000, and that is not exactly a much beyond a band-aid from what I understand. So you want to speak to that at all, Scott?
Was this the one that we delayed?
Yes,
For-
yes,
yeah.
that's correct. So this, in effect, is for the perimeter of the building, which, as city manager mentioned, the north side is over top the police department, which creates some issues in how that's constructed. So in effect, on that side, we would go down to what would be this roof of the police department, recoat that with almost in effect putting a roof on it, and then build back up above that with actually it'd be a combination of concrete and with a little bit of paver sprinkled in. It's not putting a ton of paver back.
So we're not replacing the pavers with more pavers. We're gonna do something that's a little
Correct.
bit
It's
more
gonna-
efficient, something that's gonna last a little bit longer, that we're not gonna have to come back and repair and replace.
I think there's some pavers sprinkled in, but it's not like the sea of pavers. Now, one thing, and there was you may have seen this before, but part of this plan would also be to close that front driveway off, which is unique to this building, that you can drive right up to the front door. Obviously, we would have ADA accessible amenities put in here, so to certainly get people in and out, but that would include shutting that front driveway off that we've talked about in the past.
Scott, I haven't seen that. Is that
Okay,
something that you can
yeah,
share
yeah,
with us? Some of the new.
We have a,
council member- I don't know if
concept
I've
plan
seen that,
from-
so if you could share
I
it.
think about 2 years ago.
Is that for safety concerns or?
Excuse me? Yeah, I think it was part of that too.
Security, clearly, I think.
Right.
People would typically not allow anybody to be able to drive a vehicle right up next to a municipal.
I just wanted to confirm that's what.
That was definitely the recommendation from, I believe, the police department. I mean, it's been several years at this point, but yeah, that's not a good.
I think ever since we saw the Murrah Federal Building,
Mhm.
the issue, I think that's changed dramatically.
Would we be filling in the driveway, or would we just be putting a barrier in front?
No, we would be replacing all of that with a walkway.
Okay.
In effect, with plantings and different things.
And again, I think colored stamped concrete is a lot more maintenance-free than the kinds of, or at least better than the pavers with
Grass
set
any
into
cheaper?
sand that doesn't.
But it also is green friendly, because we talked about.
Yes, and that,
runoff,
right,
'cause
and
you
that's
don't
part
love
of
tons
this.
of concrete.
We're also looking at it as like a green infrastructure type project. We'll capture the stormwater that's falling here, direct it appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, not a cheap project, but one that is entirely necessary given the current maintenance condition of it. So looking then at the sewer fund, there is $500,000 in facility upgrades, $3 million in system replacement, $1.5 million for sewer condition assessment program, $3 million dedicated to the long-term control plan, that $300,000 we talked about for the building pavers, and then GIS improvements of $10,000, in combination $8.3 million. Stormwater, $600,000 going to local street paving, $150,000 to system replacement program, the building pavers, $300,000, and NPDES compliance, $50,000 for $1.1 million. Then the next sheet kind of looks at the other funds in total, and you'll see the changes from year to year. City income tax, almost the same, I mean, a 0.5%. Basically, you see a decrease there. The auto and gas tax down by 11.8%. The health fund is up slightly, amounting to 8.1%. And of course, kudos goes out to our health department. I don't know of anyone who's done the incredible amount of work in a given year, in a given time frame, as the health department. And when you think about it, what they've dealt with on a regular basis, I think they've worked more overtime hours among just a few people than, you know, huge departments that you would ever imagine. So I can't say enough about the work that they've done and how hard they've worked throughout the year.
I have a question about the auto gas tax fund, and it might be a question for Mr. Burton, but I see a trend line where, and this might just be an accounting mechanism, where it's the transfer from income taxes is going down, but the intergovernmental is going up.
When you say intergovernmental, what can you specify
Yeah,
what you're looking at there?
411, it goes intergovernmental, you know, it's revenues from 2.5 to 3 and then to 3.5. Then the bottom line transfer from income tax goes from 600 to 320 to 0.
Okay, sure. So that transfer from income tax is a transfer, so that the paving, the city crew paving that was in the budget that said budget will not allow this, that transfer from the income tax fund to auto and gas tax is what would fund that.
Okay.
So effectively, if you put that back into place, then you're reducing general fund balance by that same amount.
Okay.
And then the auto and gas tax actual expenditures are decreasing. We're still utilizing the $1 million auto and gas tax money, the money we had received before for street paving, as was laid out, but we are transferring the expense of mowing of medians, which is about $173,000, from the auto and gas tax fund to the stormwater fund.
Thank you.
So our municipal court is down by 8%. Nuisance abatement is exactly the same as last year. The water fund is slightly down by 4.7%. The stormwater fund is up by 23%. That is, in large measure, because it's taking on the additional curb work and the mowing of those medians. And again, in a difficult year where we can use enterprise fund dollars to do some of the things that otherwise was being picked up by general fund, we're doing that creatively wherever we could, and that was an example of that. The sewer fund is up by 6.1%, in large measure obviously continuing to do those things associated with the long-term control plan. And that is the 2021 budget presentation for the non-public safety. We will be doing the public safety at our next meeting. We will also be entertaining any and all questions either on this or that one. And also we will entertain any and all questions tonight that you have on anything that you've heard or anything else associated with the budget.
Termination pay, is that pay for people who might be cashing in vacation days that they didn't have? I just see it's gone up considerably over a year and a half.
That is for those who retire or resign. That's them getting paid when they leave the city for their vacation time, sick time, etc. And as we have those tenured employees, particularly police and fire employees, when they leave, they are more expensive as far as a cash out, but we do see the savings on the other end with the entry-level officers.
Is comp time paid out upon retirement or termination?
Yes. Yeah, comp time is required to be paid out. Now, you can obviously limit the accrual of comp time on the front end, but if an employee has accrued comp time, it's required to be paid out because it's earned in place of overtime.
What are our current policies on comp time accrual and payout rate?
It varies by union contract, but for the non-union employees, it's a maximum of 240 hours is the max that they can accrue, and therefore the max that they can cash out upon retirement or resignation. The public safety unions, I don't want to misquote the number, but it is a little higher than the non-union.
Do you have to use the comp time hours within a certain time frame?
You do not.
Whoa. Okay. And are they paid out at the normal hourly rate, or is it like an overtime rate?
So it's paid out at your rate of pay upon resignation.
Okay. Okay, and then to clarify, I heard city employees the policy is not to use or to accrue overtime, and it is only comp time. Is that a per department thing or a?
Yeah, it varies by department. Yeah, it's ultimately up to the department director based upon that department's budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could, again, I would really like to commend the staff that you have in this community. They have done just an incredible job in doing an awful lot with very little in the way of resources, and recognizing in a difficult year putting together a budget that's even tougher yet, but continuing to do nearly all of, if not that much and more, of the things that everybody's come to expect. I appreciate very much all the work that they did to put this budget together and to come to this proposal. So I particularly commend Jake and his staff. They did a good job. Other questions, comments, concerns, observations, statements, otherwise? Okay. Well, we have enjoyed the process, and we look forward to the next meeting as well and doing the public safety presentation. You will hear more about, obviously, our police and our fire departments at that time.
Mr. Palaniuk, if I may, I believe Judge Sharon would like to give a brief presentation on the court as well.
Sorry. Without question, the courts would definitely like to do that, so if we could take some time for them, if we could so indulge you, I would appreciate that. So sorry.
That's all right. Good evening. Hello. I'll be quick. It's late. As you can see from the packet and what the manager presented, the court did reduce its budget by 8%. The reduction includes leaving a deputy clerk's position open that we were going to hire. As cases rise, we'll have to fill that position sometime in 2021. There's a couple House bill and Senate bills that we're looking at that could have a pretty profound impact on that. One of them is House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 3. That might have the effect of reducing felony drug charges to what they call super misdemeanors. And as municipal courts are always on the bottom rung of the food chain, that means all those felony drug cases, the meth and heroin cases, will come back to Middletown Municipal Court. We send hundreds, if not thousands, of those to the Common Pleas Court each year, so all of those will be coming back to our court. There'll be a lot of new cases to process. The other bill that we're looking at is Senate Bill 353. It's a bail reform bill, which means, among other things, that we'll have to do an analysis of every bail, every bond that from every defendant that comes in every day, and we'll have to keep statistics on those, and we'll have to send those statistics to the Supreme Court. That's a whole nother set of issues that we'll have to deal with. Other issues that we're working on, we're still trying to develop a community service program. I would love to get people out there that are either cannot or are not paying their fines out there doing community service, cleaning up our alleys and our roadways. It would be a good program. We got sidelined on it, obviously. COVID-19 shut it down for the time being, but we're still working on that. We want to get back on that. We've been working on a software upgrade for the past year. We're under contract for installation early next year. We're going into the sandbox here, hopefully this month or next month. This new software is going to change everything for the court. It's going to change. We're going to be able to do e-filings and in the civil court, e-tickets in the traffic, e-warrants, e-complaints, everything online. We'll eventually be able to go paperless. We'll be able to do things like send text messages to people when, like, if they got a court case or if their fines are due or if they're supposed to meet with the probation officer. So it will create a whole lot of efficiencies that we're pretty excited about. I'm scared to death to have to learn that software, but it's going to happen.
We looked at the Senate Bill 353 and the statistics associated with that, if it may help us, or if there's a requirement we can add to it now that may help fulfill that as we're implementing this new software. I think maybe we could make sure it fulfills that in advance.
Yeah, well, we don't know what's going to happen with that bill, so it's you never can tell with these things, whether it dies or comes out in a fully different format or how it's gonna look, but, yeah, we'd take all the help we could get. We were fortunate to be awarded a technology grant from the Ohio Supreme Court this year. We added remote video technology so that, heaven forbid, if I or a magistrate or somebody necessary to the court were quarantined, we could, I could do court from my living room. Yeehaw. But it would be very helpful if we have jury trials. It could assist us in those regards. If we have a witness that is unavailable, we could do it by video. We've tried to act responsibly to I'll talk about COVID in a minute, but the underlying drug epidemic that we've been dealing with forever. We've got Access Counseling got a grant, and before that, and more so because of that, we have treatment providers embedded into every docket in court. So anytime a defendant comes into court, if they want treatment, at the very least, they're going to get exposed to it that very first day they're in court, and thereafter as well. We've sent so far this year, I think as of August, over 150 referrals for mental health and substance abuse treatment to Access Counseling alone, and that's not the only agency that we partner with. Last year, and I'm not going to use this year's statistics because they're out the window because of, we didn't do drug tests, for example, for 4 months, while we were in the early part of the COVID pandemic. But last year we did over 400 drug screens, many of them in the courtroom prior to sentencing. I'll ask somebody if they're going to test positive, and oh, no, I shouldn't. Well, nobody should, but they do. And that dictates what happens with them in many regards. So far in 2020, we've referred over, of the 150 that we've referred, 55% of the defendants that were referred to treatment are still in treatment, which to me is an amazing statistic. Last year, it was over 450 that were referred to. Again, that's just that one counseling agency. There's others too. Last year, we transported over 50 defendants directly from jail to inpatient drug and alcohol rehab facilities. So, it's not just about putting somebody in jail, because if you just do that, they're going to be back. We're trying to attack recidivism and keep them from coming back and get them employed and get them out there so they're not stealing lawnmowers out of people's garages. They're employed and they're paying taxes and they're supporting their kids. We are strong proponents of Vivitrol. That's an addiction tool mostly for opioids as well as alcohol. It doesn't work on methamphetamine. Nothing works on methamphetamine. That's the one addiction that the first line of defense is detox, and the only way to successfully detox somebody on meth is to house them in jail for a period of time. I had one yesterday that Army ghosts were telling him what to do. There's snakes in my stomach. There's the telephone pole told me what to do. I mean, they're out there, and they're coming into court, and they're still psychotic, and they stay that way for months sometimes. So what do you do with a person like that? They're not receptive to treatment at all. So we're working on that. We're experimenting with that with treatment agencies. So we're doing what we can with that. COVID-19, we've just like every other court, we never did shut down. People didn't stop committing crimes when COVID hit, but we only let parties in the courtroom. The families can't come in. It's only the defendant, the police officer, the alleged victim, the essential parties to the case. The rest of them, we have a monitor out in the rotunda that they can watch the case. I was coming down from the civil on the 3rd floor the other day, and I could hear my magistrate in the 1st floor courtroom about 2 floors up, so you can hear it pretty well. This year was new territory for everybody. Speedy trials, the right to speedy trial was suspended, and all the time frames, all the quotas, everything was in a mess. So we're finally getting back to some normalcy. Evictions are still not back to normal, but we're working with those. So it's been a challenging year at a lot of levels. Worst year ever, I think. And I'm looking forward to 2021. And thank you for the time. I hope I didn't take up too much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other budget, 2021 budget matters anyone wants to raise? Yes.
So we had sent out an email, kind of polled council, got responses for Tuesday, the 13th, which would be our off Tuesday, you know, not our typical council meeting night, but a Tuesday. We got Monday, the 19th, which is the day before the next regularly scheduled council meeting. And we got Tuesday, the 20th, which would be our next regular scheduled council meeting, but beginning earlier. So those are the 3 dates that came up as possibilities for council. Do you want to make a decision tonight on when you would like to hold that special meeting, or if you wanted to start the meeting early on the 20th for the public safety budget presentation?
I'm good with any of those personally.
Yeah, starting earlier is always preferable to me.
It was the 13th, the 20th, and what was the other option?
Tuesday the 13th, that is the off Tuesday between now and the next meeting. Monday the 19th, which is, it's a Monday before the next meeting. And then Tuesday the 20th, beginning early.
I can do either the 13th or the 20th.
I think I shared my preference was Monday, but I can do.
Right.
I like the before the meeting, just to knock it all out at once. That's just me. I'm open for all of them.
Sounds good. Does that sound like the preferred? I hear two about, yeah. Does that work for everyone else? Sure. Okay, so how much before the next meeting would we want to do that?
So our regularly scheduled meeting would begin at 5:30. Mr. Palanick, do you have a time frame that you want to look at? Because we can always begin the meeting, a regular scheduled meeting, when the budget presentation ends. You can always start a little after.
Yeah, I'm just always concerned about the public because, you know, if they believe it's going to start at a certain time and then it doesn't and it continues on and on and on. That's why we did it after in this case, so that people would know it was coming after. But I'll work to whoever's schedule. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what to expect and that the city council has as much possible time as they feel they need to ask questions or go through anything. So that was the reason we wanted it separate, so that, you know, you really have the time to get whatever details you're after. And, you know, I've spent a career usually having these done on entirely separate nights where we spend a lot of time and we go through, and everybody's different, obviously, but used to spending, you know, a lot of time so that you have the ability to do it. So it's really about you, what you all would like, and we'll do it however, you know, you're comfortable with. So
If we began the meeting at 4 o'clock, that would give us 90 minutes to review the public safety budget. And then if the meeting did not begin right at 5:30, it would begin somewhere in that time frame. Like I say, I'm open to, I just want to make sure that we have the will
To me,
of council.
it depends on what's on that next meeting's agenda. Is it possible for us to do this via email and we can send that information out to everyone rather than determine at this moment, or do we need to know right now?
Whatever the council would like to do.
Is there a reason we can't continue the presentation after the next as later in the meeting like we did tonight? Why the next meeting can't occur the way that this one did?
yeah, I certainly it could. It might be a late night. That's obviously up to you. Yeah.
Are we voting on anything budget related to the 2021 budget in the next meeting?
No.
That won't happen until the first meeting in November. You'll have a first reading, you'll have a second reading at the second meeting in November, so that we're ready to go for January 2021.
I would then prefer we do it after the meeting, like Ms. Nini said, just to make sure we have the time and we also don't mess up the start time of the next meeting.
So we'll just go ahead and have our regularly scheduled meeting and then have the budget presentation at the end of the meeting like we did tonight. Is that correct?
I think that's a way for us to include the public, and if they're already watching the meeting, they can tune in.
That's good.
Okay,
Thank you.
brings us to a vote for executive session. Under the authority of ORC 121.22G8, to consider confidential information related to the marketing plan, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance, or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance, provided that both of the following conditions apply. One, the information is directly related to a request for economic development assistance that is to be provided or administered under any provision of Chapter 715, 725, 1724, or 1728, or Section 701.07, 3735.67 to 3735.70, 5709.40 to 5709.43, 5709.61 to 5709.69, 5709.73 to 5709.75, or 5709.77 to 5709.81 of the revised code, or that involves public infrastructure improvements or the extension of utility services that are directly related to an economic development project. 2, a unanimous quorum of the public body determines by roll call vote that the executive session is necessary to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment of or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Skanku, please call the roll for.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn until Tuesday, October 20th. After our executive session, we will adjourn Tuesday, October 20th in here at 5:30 p.m., followed by the budget presentation. Great, thank you. Until then, blue skies over Middletown.